We are continuing with a discussion of an article that was in Torah.com, and it's called Torah on One Foot. What is the Torah's core message and purpose? And, as an inspiration, they point out that the stories in the Talmud about Hillel, where a person who wants to convert to Judaism comes to him and says, I will convert on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on one foot. And actually, he first went to Hillel's counterpart, which is Shammai, and Shammai recognized that he was making fun of him. And Shammai, who was a builder, had a ruler in his hand and smacks him with a ruler. Then he goes to Hillel, and Hillel says, what is hateful to you, do not do to any person. That is the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and study. So Torah.com has this collection of, I presume, scholars. I wish they would have done a better job. I don't think they did. I'm going to jump to the end there. I don't think they identify the background of the scholars, but anyway, that's not so important as what they are saying. And so we started reading, and I will share the screen. And we are up to a section, it's on page 4, which says, inculcate your children with Torah. Inculcate's a great English word. I somehow learned it in college. It means, this is the way I like to explain it, it means to teach by repetition. Inculcate means to teach by repetition. By repetition, you can teach someone, and that what's inculcating is. Inculcate, teach by repetition. Everybody getting the idea here?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
getting the idea. That's good.
Okay. And actually, in the Shema, we have Vishanantam. I can't do it unless I'm actually chanting Via Hafta. And the Hafta says Vishanantam, and it says, you shall teach these words to your children. But it uses this verb shanantam, which has the same Hebrew root as shana, which means year. But a shana is something that repeats. So it's actually, inculcating is a better translation. They could have said, they could have used the word lamad, lamadatem, but they used a different word. Anyway, I don't actually think this particular paragraph goes to that point. But let's, would someone like to read? And I don't have my usual readers. Ken, would you like to read? You need to unmute and inculcate.
There we go. Okay. Inculcate your children with Torah. Israelite Samaritans treat the Torah of Moses with sacred reverence. From the moment a baby girl or a baby boy or girl is born, parents begin to familiarize them with the words of the Torah, teaching them to memorize the Shema Yisrael and the opening of the song Ha'azinu. For the name, for in the
Oh, so what
name
we have
Yahweh.
written here is Ha'azinu.
For in the name of Yahweh I proclaim and give glory to our God, the rock whose deeds are perfect, yea, all God's ways are just, faithful God, never false, true, and upright indeed. They conclude with the affirmation, blessed is our God forever, and blessed is his name forever. Children begin reading the Torah at the age of 5, letter by letter in the ancient Hebrew script, word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, until they have read the entire Torah. The more advanced learners finish by age 6 and others by age 7. Boys and girls join the family's circle of Torah reading by reading the weekly portion after Sabbath morning prayers at 6 in the morning. Thus do Samaritan children learn the Torah of Moses on one foot.
I'm not very familiar with who the Samaritans are. My understanding is they are a group of Israelites. Um, I didn't realize that they were still around and practicing. There's a story, I think most of us have heard the story of the Good Samaritan, which is in the New Testament. Um, But anyway, that's a different approach. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Samaritans. Um, if not, let's move on to ethics and empathy. Ken, why don't you
Okay,
continue?
empathy is a start. Slamming Shammai got it right. Slamming Shammai got it right, embracing the whole Torah, rejecting reductionism. We have not done well with core exponents. Tikkun Olam creaks along. Moshiach now is apocalypse now. Kedusha, holiness, leads to isolation and poverty. Torah umada, Torah and the science is daf yom, daf
Daf
yomi,
yomi.
in a high-tech cubicle, and Ben-Gurion's pitch of Israel, a light unto the nations. Well, how's that working for you? Humble Hillel cleverly posits a negative command based on subjectivity, universalizing it via empathy to call to all. Its seeming minimal directive explains a lot of the Torah. This is doable, and when practiced, could change everything. Learn that.
Okay. Landis is I've been somebody I've heard of. I don't remember actually who he is. I should have done some more homework on this to find out who these folks are. But yeah, reducing it to a simple phrase is, I would say in the reform world, we talk a lot about tikkun olam, repairing the world. In the Hasidic world, Mashiach now is is the phrase. Why he says it's apocalypse now. Well, actually, I do understand why it's apocalypse now because in traditional Hasidic understanding, the Messiah will come uh, uh, when at the end of time, and basically the rules will be completely different, um, kedusha and so on. So interesting. I'll just keep going along. If people have comments, just chime in. Let's do another one, and I'll ask Joanne to read a little bit. Listening to others.
Listening, listening
Uh,
to our limits. What is hateful to others, do not do. By which I mean, do not make what is hateful to you your starting point. You are not the measure of all things. You were not there in the beginning when God created the heavens and the earth, but that does not mean that you have no leg to stand on. You do stand, but on one leg only. The other leg is everything else, everything that limits you and constitutes you as limited. Listen to those limits, be guided by them. Other people, the voices of the past, illness, death, the world.
Actually, I have trouble understanding now. If anybody can shed some light on
Which part that you didn't understand,
it. Well, what's hateful to others, do not do.
right?
Don't make what's hateful to you your starting point. Um, I guess what he's saying, I think what he's saying, but I really don't know, is what is hateful. Yeah. So Hillel is saying what is hateful to you, don't do to others. What's hateful to others, do not do. So I guess what he's saying is don't be so self-centered as judging all actions about what's hateful to you.
The
Um,
first part is about the other guy that don't be hateful to them. The second part is don't do it yourself.
you're
You
talking about Hillel's statement or this
do
paragraph?
not make what is hateful make your starting point. That's kind of like okay, well, I'm trying to see one as a reciprocal, not reciprocal, but the other direction.
Yeah, and then he says, I think the essence is don't use your own judgment about what's good and what's bad as the be all and end all.
Yeah.
Um, but that doesn't mean you have no leg to stand on. You do, but one leg, the other leg is everything else. Um, everything that limits you and constitutes you. I mean, I have trouble understanding them. So
Well,
I will admit that.
I think to me it sounds like if somebody is angry and to be good to yourself and then you'll be good to others. Because sometimes when people are angry, I've seen it myself, I promise you, or that insecure within themselves, they start acting very negative towards others. You understand?
Yeah. So if you're angry, even if you're angry at, the fact that I don't know, there were a lot of bird droppings on your car this morning. That anger can spill over into how you treat other people. I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it myself. It's not easy to deal with, but yes, that
Yes, yes. I don't know what that has to do with Hillel or this paragraph, but
oh,
I agree with you.
because I was saying, do not make what is hateful to you your starting point. Like, don't take it out on others.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So he's saying sort of don't limit your ethics by only focusing on what's hateful to you.
Right. And then usually people who are like that, a lot of times they'll take it out on others. It depends, but I've seen it.
Okay. Okay. Paul?
Yes, I want to, Joanne, I want to piggyback on what you're saying. Uh, if you see somebody across the table from you that's eating something and they're chewing really loud and they're like potato chips or whatever they're chewing, and you think it's too loud for you, don't start bothering them by saying, "Get rid of those potato chips, they're bothering me." Do not do not use your ideas as a starting point. Don't say they're bothering me because they don't deserve that. They deserve a measure of what is good to you, and what should be good to you could be good to others. They say it in a nice way, like in a polite way. Boy, your potato chip eating sounds a little bit loud. Don't say, "Don't eat those potato chips, they're too loud." You could say it in those two ways.
Yeah,
Pick the
I
way that's
agree.
best for you.
So that actually, it reminds me of the commandment to tochacha, to reprove someone. But really, when they sin, I presume if someone was mistreating a child, you would change your attitude. You would speak up and try and interfere. So there's a borderline. There's a
There
wonderful
is.
expression in Hebrew called yesh gevul. Gevul means border. There's a limit. There's a border.
That's right.
Um,
There
okay,
is.
Ken or Patricia?
Yeah, I was thinking it says, so you are not the measure of all things. In other words, you're not as it's saying there, you're not the beginning and the end, but you do have standing. You on your one leg, you have
Hmm.
standing because you do exist, but pay attention to the other things that are around you. When you're acting and interacting with other people, listen to the things that limit you, which are the sort of the external factors. Listen to them and have those have an influence on your behavior.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, in the New Testament, um, Jesus is quoted as saying, and there are some people who believe that Jesus may have been one of Hillel's students. Um, in the positive, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So that's a positive way of stating the golden rule. This one is a negative way of stating it. Don't do to others what is hateful or what you wouldn't have anyone want to do to you.
Exactly.
Sometimes, people have observed, suppose you're a masochist and you like pain. Does that mean it's okay to inflict pain on others? So I've
Exactly.
heard people
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
propose something which they call a platinum rule, which is do to others what is good for them. Um,
Yes.
but you can also quibble with that. Okay, Cindy.
Yeah, what you just said is what I've heard taught in cross-cultural courses, where
Ah,
they restate the golden rule: do unto others as others would like you to do unto them.
yes, yes, okay.
Yeah.
And I think in a cross-cultural setting, in some cultures, eating noisily is actually a good thing. It shows your appreciation for the food. Um, it just occurs to me because we were just talking about this in my family, and I think because my parents went through the Depression, leaving food on your plate is a major no-no. It's, people are starving in China. Um, and, as I've traveled with Sonia's family in France, in French culture, and maybe it's Sephardic culture, but I think it's more French culture, but I'm not sure. Finishing everything on your plate is an insult to the host, because what it says is you're still hungry and they didn't give you enough to eat. So you always leave something over to show that what they gave you was more than enough. So I think that's you'll see in various settings different cultures about putting your feet up and showing someone the bottom of your feet and so on. But so anyway, yeah, culture plays a big role in this. Okay, let's see. We're going to alternate. Joanne, would you like to read here? You must not remain
Sure.
indifferent.
Sure. You must not remain indifferent. Lo tachal lachatelem.
I would say lo tuchal lehit alem.
Lahit alem. Okay, these staccato words appear in the middle of a paragraph, which speaks of our obligation to restore lost items to our fellow, including clothing and livestock, even if it's an inconvenience to ourselves. If you were looking for a three-word summation of the entire Torah, that would be it. We need not be saints, but that change of Torah remains a goad that will not let us hide. Another way to translate the verse, you may not hide. Rashi, in his typical way, comments that we may not hide our eyes as though we didn't see others suffering. These powerful, uncompromising, stern words call us to be who we are supposed to be. Whether tired or not, worn down or not, we cannot hide. We must not remain indifferent.
And Bradley Shavat Artson is a scholar at American Jewish University. I know him. By the way, here's a fun one for you. The Talmud. So you actually have an obligation to return a lost object. Okay. So at one extreme, you find somebody's wallet in the road. You have an obligation. It's a Torah commandment. It's one of the 613 to return that. At the other extreme, you see a nickel lying in the street. Do you have an obligation to return that? And so I remember the Talmudic discussion on this. The obligation is, if you had lost this object, would you personally go looking for it? Which actually the rabbis in their discussion are responding to a person's dignity. So if I lost $1 bill, I probably wouldn't spend time looking for it. If I dropped a $20 bill, $100 bill, I probably would. But what they were saying, if you have a very highly respected rabbi or scholar, he, presumably it would be, he has a different obligation to return lost objects than someone else. But I thought that was an interesting how the Talmud specifies what these commandments mean. Okay.
Humanity in God's image. We love short, pithy sayings. The Bible is full of them, and so is the Talmud. Most notably Hillel, but all such reductionisms leave out as much as they contain. Rabbi Akiva quotes Leviticus 19:18, love your neighbor as yourself, without telling us who counts as a neighbor. But Ben Azai has it right when he says the most important general principle should apply to all humanity. This is the story of humanity. God created us all in God's image. It's up to try to for everyone, not just whoever we describe as our neighbors. Jeremy Rosen.
I don't know who Jeremy Rosen is, but there is a discussion, and Breshit Rabbah would be midrash about what is the most important commandment, and Akiva quotes "Love your neighbor as yourself," and Ben Azai quotes a passage where it basically says God created humanity in God's image, and so what he says is the most important idea is to treat other people as though you are basically treating God's image. So that's interesting.
Right.
Oh,
Humanity reflects God's oneness. Some changes take time and it doesn't work to rush them. Other changes come upon a person while standing on one foot, or indeed, karaf on in the
Ayin, uh,
ayin, in the
Keharef, probably Ayin.
all right, okay,
Mhm.
in the blank of an eye. In ancient paganism, divinities were often national or tribal. Hence, groups were cleft apart, even theologically, and could not identify with each other, let alone love each other. But when Hillel declares his paraphrase of love your neighbor as yourself to be the Torah's essence, he reminds us of the connectedness of all humanity, a connectedness that is corollary of our core belief in a single creator. And despite divisions and differences between individuals and groups, which are real and important in themselves, Hillel, in a flash, imparts the truth that all humans are essentially one big family, and as much as they are all made by the one, uh,
Borei
Borah
Olam.
Olam,
Mhm.
creator of the world.
Now, one idea, and Jonathan Sachs talks about this in one of his books. One of the subversive ideas, certainly in Torah and Bible, is that we are all in the same tribe. And I often reflect on the idea that competition and getting stuff from other people and racism and mistrust of someone who doesn't look like me and doesn't speak like me and so on is literally built into our DNA. As humanity evolved, um, we were in tribes, and different tribes are out to get the stuff owned by their neighboring tribes. And so what he argues is even in some of the discussions of Ishmael and other enemies of Israel, that one of the underlying, you could argue, subversive messages of the Bible is that we are all in the same tribe, namely the tribe of people created in the image of God. And it's not just Israelites, but actually everyone. And you have this issue of who is the neighbor in love your neighbor as yourself, and what does it mean to love in that paragraph, and what does it mean as yourself? Other than those three ambiguities, the phrase is completely clear. Paul.
Yes, I have to tell you a little story. I won't divulge any names or person who did this, but it happened to me a couple of weeks ago. And we were sitting outside. It was one of the Shabbat services where you sat
Right.
outside. And one of the ushers said, you're not carrying any books or anything. You're not carrying even any pieces of paper. You shouldn't even be doing anything. You're not an usher. You're not. And he said it in a rude way,
So
very rude way.
you were an usher at the time?
I was. He said,
Okay.
he said, you don't deserve to be an usher. And I let it go. And when he came back to me just a minute afterwards or 2 minutes afterwards, he was making a circle around. I said, don't you think Judaism teaches you to say it in a different way? He said, don't tell me what to do. I'm doing it my way. Don't tell me what to do. And I thought that was really not a very good way of expressing himself, and not as a Jew when he was giving out something to other people. And the next day, the next time we met each other, I just said, "How are you doing?" I didn't say anything about the fight, the little thing we had
So
together.
when you said to him, "Don't you think Judaism suggests a different way of saying that?" Was that one-on-one in private?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Well, I think that's, it wasn't a bad thing to
No, because
do.
it really
And
isn't. It really isn't a good way to start off the Jewish New Year. It isn't.
I think we spoke about this several weeks ago, right? About ways to communicate. I
yes,
seem to remember
Yes, yes,
we did
yeah.
this. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
because there was an article on this. There is a commandment in the Torah, which is hocheach tocheach. You
Yeah.
shall surely reprove your fellow. And then the question is, how do you do that in a positive way?
Yes. How do you do it in a positive way? Yes.
Yes. So he could have said to you, "Oh, you're an usher. You know, I think the ushers are supposed to have materials to hand out. Can I get something for you?"
Yes. Yes,
That
exactly
would have
right.
been
Can I do
a
something for you?
positive way.
Because I couldn't carry anything. I was at the walk in a walker. I couldn't carry books. I
Oh,
couldn't carry
okay.
papers or nothing.
Okay.
He could have said, "Gee, you know, you don't look like you can carry anything. I'll do it. I'll do it for you."
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay.
But he said no.
I
He
guess
was
you could
very
have said,
rude.
maybe this slides towards the mean reply, but you could have said, "Boy, if I wasn't confined to this walker, I would love to be able to
Yes,
carry material."
exactly. That would have been a great thing for me to say, but I was so angry at the
Yeah,
time.
I understand.
I didn't catch it in time, but I did say to something to him. I had to say something to him.
Okay. So, Joanne, let's read one more and then I'll turn it back to Ken.
All right,
Tikkun
Tikkun
Olam and
Olam.
Selam Elohim.
Right. The Torah laws and way of life should create a perfect society which will be admired by the nations of the world, thereby sanctifying God's name. The wisdom and the logic are supposed to be readily recognizable to the Gentile mind. How are we doing? Many more flock to Varanasi than Jerusalem or Bnei Barak. The Zohar says there are 600,000 letters in the Torah. Each of us is a letter in the Torah, and are we refined and holy enough to be instruments of God's revelation? Altogether is the only way.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, I think there are actually not 600,000 letters in the Torah. I actually have a book on this subject, but um, I don't know what Varanasi is. Does anybody? I guess it's a place.
It's in India. It's one of the holy Hindu cities in India.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Um, and I should just explain, I think many of us know these phrases. Tikkun olam means repair of the world, and um, Selam Elohim means in the image or likeness of God. So that's a um, and then the other phrase, which is worth just commenting on, a perfect society which will be admired by the nations of the world. So there is this idea of or lagoyim, to be a light unto the nations. One of the prophets describe it as such, that our job is to be a light unto the nations. So the non-Jews will so admire uh, our lifestyle that they will say, "Gee, there must be something to this Jewish understanding of God." Paul?
Yeah, I'm starting to read some of the texts for the high holidays, and I remember what a rabbi told me. He said to me, each letter in the Torah counts as a letter. If it's missing, the whole Torah is missing. You can't have any missing letters in the Torah. The whole Torah is no good. It can't be missing a letter.
So what I would say is, to be precise, if there's a missing letter in the Torah is not kosher.
That's right, exactly.
So it can't be used for ritual reading.
That's right,
Or
exactly.
if a letter is, is scratched out,
Yes,
or if it's imperfect. So what synagogues do is they have sofars, scribes come and inspect the Torah.
yes,
And in the good old days, they would have a book, a tikkun, and they would go word for word, and they would do it by hand.
yes.
Uh, a few years ago, I remember a scribe visiting, I think it was a Dad Elohim, with a portable scanner. And he ran the scanner over the page of the Torah, and that was then scanned into a computer that did the comparison. Now I think they can do it, much more electronically, probably just by photographing the pages and identifying any letters that need to be adjusted, or if something is
Adjusted, yeah.
missing, or if there's one word out of order. I mean, one of the things that is remarkable about that teaching is when you go back and look at ancient biblical texts, such as in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So these are texts from 2,000 years ago, and for
Yeah.
well over 1,000 years, they've been hand copied from
Yes,
book to book. So there was no
Right.
printing press,
Right.
but it was a matter of hand copying, such as a Torah scroll is written today, and how remarkable the agreement is between those texts. It's not 100%. There are differences, and those are really interesting, but how remarkable it is, and it's because it's a holy process to copy. And
Exactly.
a scribe
Yeah.
writing the Torah does it very, very slowly and very carefully.
Yes.
Okay. Now I think I was going to ask Ken to read Refining Moral Character.
Refining moral character, early Jews from the Second Temple period on understood that God chose Abram as a response to Abram choosing God. The Torah, however, is more interested in God's choice and God's desire for connection. The task of Israel is to respond to God's call, and in so doing, to become worthy of God's chosenness. The clearest source for discerning the raison d'etre of the Jewish people can be discovered when considering why the first Jew was chosen for the covenant. Abraham was selected as the first Jew because of his moral commitment to follow the divine path. La'asot tzedakah umishpat is not only do what
To
was
to
right
not
and
only
to not only do what was right and
Reasonable.
just, but to teach his children to do so. On one foot, the Torah is about cultivating the spiritual tools and refining the moral character traits to ensure that one brings more light than darkness, more healing than suffering, and more repairing than destroying.
I can let's see if I can just do. Oh, okay, cool. Let's take a look and see what happens. Yeah. So, oh, this is interesting. 18, 19. I'm trying to get the text. For I have chosen him. For I have chosen him that he will direct his children's household to keep the ways of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Okay. So that's part of the biblical text that is being quoted. So that's God choosing Abraham. And there are, it says the early Jews from the Second Temple period on understood that Abram chose God. And so you have, the Midrashim of Abram destroying the idols in his father's idol shop. And also there's a story of how he looks up and he sees, he sees the sun and he says, that's very powerful. So I should worship the sun. But then night comes. So the moon replaces the sun. So he goes through all of these ideas. And then he finally concludes that there's one God that's above all of them. And so in those midrashim, those midrashim explain why God chose Abraham. Especially, I like the story. I think most of you are probably familiar with the story of young Avram, uh, breaking the idols in his father's shop,
Right.
and that's midrash. That's not in the Bible. And interestingly, that story is actually in the Quran, in the holy book of Muslims. Okay, Ken, would you like to read Good Decision Making?
Okay. Good decision making. A central theme in the Torah is a struggle between good decision making and power. This struggle is reflected in the name Yisrael, Israel, which translates as struggle with power, God. The Torah introduced individual decision making with an eye toward the community and constructive outcomes. Over millennia, through biblical writings and redactions, a corpus of instructions for behavior was compiled, forming a theocracy governed by teachings or laws. This body of law directed the behavior of its people, including their king and their community members.
Okay. So I think what they're talking here is about the development of halakha. So you have a few laws. Well, we count 613 commandments in the Torah itself in the first 5 books. And then, of course, the rabbis of the Talmud add thousands more. And Yisrael, interestingly, it's struggling with God. The word El in that word is clearly a name for God. We talk about Elohim. Um, it's struggling with power is sort of an interesting way of looking at this. But the interesting thing about Jewish law is that it applied not only to the commoners, but it also applied to the kings, which and it was in theory one law for the rulers as well as the rest of the people. Okay, Ken, you want to continue?
Sure, save the hostages. The regula is simple. If your neighbors are suffering in the hell of the Gaza tunnels, liberate them immediately, just as you would have wanted them to do for you. And all the rest is commentary.
Right.
Okay. There's a whole discussion. I think we read an article about redeeming hostages and when do you redeem hostages and when do you captives, when do you not redeem hostages? So this one clearly is very much in favor of saving the hostages. Paul.
Yes, I was reading something just the other day about the Underground Railroad that was in New York would run on 3 tracks. There's an electrical track between 2 tracks that run the train, and then there's an electrical track in the middle of that. And for some reason, a man fell off and stumbled onto the electrical track, the middle of the 2 tracks. And a gentleman standing by on one of the edges of the train track said, "Should I save him? If I save him, I'm going to be touching him and the track, and I'm going to be killed myself. What should I do? Because I'm supposed to save people who are in trouble." And that's where as far as I got. So I don't know
So
what's going to happen to him.
yeah,
But
so I mean, what you're talking about is the third rail, and
yes,
you often see that phrase used. I mean, quite commonly these days it's called like the third rail of politics.
Mhm.
Don't politicians can't touch this issue.
yes,
Um, and yeah, the New York City subway system is an electrical system,
right.
and actually the electrical rail is not between the 2 tracks; it's alongside of them. I mean,
Alongside of
I
him.
know it
Okay.
very well, and it is covered, but it's not insulated because there's
Yeah,
basically a paddle that goes through and touches the electrical current,
I see.
fairly high voltage, because every one of the cars has an electric motor. It's not just a locomotive pulling it.
I see.
And then the other rails actually serve as the ground
The
that the
ground.
electricity returns to. Um, I think Jewish law basically says you are not to surrender your own life to save someone else's life.
I see.
I actually think that's pretty clear, and I think there's a discussion which reads includes the phrase, "Who's to say his blood is redder than yours, or your blood is redder than his?" There's a very interesting discussion which is more problematic, which is the following. Clearly, the rabbis in the Talmud had no idea about electrical trains.
Right.
But what they said is, suppose you're in the desert with someone else and you have some water and you need to get to, the next oasis or whatever, and you only have water that if you share the water, you will both die. But if you don't share your water with the other person will die and you will live.
Yes. So that's a dilemma. What do you do then?
Yeah. So
And presumably, if you give all of it to the other person, then the other person.
yes, and that's a possibility too. So what they say is basically you don't share the water.
You don't.
But a tzaddik might, someone who is very righteous might and trust God or passing by caravan to help him. But the decision is very clear. You don't sacrifice your own life to save someone else's life under Jewish law. I mean, people do that and they're martyrs. And
Right.
we see it in Jewish history and so on. But it's not a requirement of Jewish law.
I see.
You
Okay.
reminded me a few years ago in Westchester, a woman, unfortunately, and she was in her car and she was told to back up from the gates when the train was coming. She didn't, and she died. Her
Oh,
car went on the third rail.
oh my.
Yeah, that was
So
sad.
she was hit by the train, or she just
No, I don't think she was hit by the train. I think I'm
yeah,
not exact.
I don't
I'm
know
not.
how a car would be exposed to a third rail.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it happened for sure. It was
Now,
terrible.
in a lot of electrical trains, they're called trolleys,
Right.
and the term trolley actually refers to a device which connects the train to overhead electrical lines.
Overheads.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Or
it
yeah.
may be that one of them had fallen or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there were a way to rescue the person without being killed, you would try and do that.
Yeah.
And but so that's okay. Ken, you want to read one more? Go ahead, Erwin. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just happened last Saturday at in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the Hershey Park. A small boy, maybe about 7 years old, was walking on a high railroad track,
Right.
about 20 feet high, and a guy jumped up and to a I don't know building, and then from the building he jumped up on a track and saved the little boy's life.
Oh my. Yeah.
And so it didn't involve him losing his life to save
No,
another life.
exactly. But
There's
it could
actually a
have, because if he would have missed a track where he hung on to bring himself up to close to the little boy, he
yeah,
could
there's
have
no
died.
question that he risked his life,
Yes.
but it's a difference between risking your life and, a case like the one Paul described, presumably if you touch the person,
Right.
yeah, and maybe you could get a hook and grab their clothes or grab a belt or something. I don't know what the voltage level is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, there is that issue. There's a troubling book. I think we once discussed it actually in Adat Elohim, the men's Torah study. I think we did. I ought to have a session on this. There is a very troubling book called Responsa of the Holocaust.
Wow.
Yes, yes. I
And
remember.
Wow.
yeah, that would be something. I'm going to make
Huh.
another note. I have
You
my
did
list
that.
here.
Well,
You did that. I
I did it, but
remember.
I did it a long time ago, Herb.
That
Yeah.
would be interesting to talk about.
Um,
That would be
and
interesting to talk
I'm
about.
pretty sure I actually copied some interesting responsa. And basically, this was a case where there were, you had concentration camps, and there was a rabbi in the concentration camp, actually, I think a fairly young rabbi, and inmates would come to him with Jewish legal questions, and he would render answers, and he actually kept a record of his responsa, and he buried them in tin cans
Wow.
in the camps. And then after the camp was liberated, he somehow got back and uncovered them. And what I have is a volume in English, and I think the originals are in Hebrew, and it's pretty well summarized. I would actually like it if it was, 2 or 3 times as long and really laid out the reasoning. But there was one very troubling case, which is the following. Somebody finds out that a limited number, I don't know, just say 200 people, are going to be sent from one of these camps on a work assignment to another place. And the understanding is the people that are going to be left behind are probably going to be killed in the gas chambers. And one guy comes to the rabbi and says to the rabbi, I've learned this, and if I bribe one of the guards, I can get either his name or his child's name substituted on the list for someone else's name.
Ay, ay, ay. Yeah.
And he asked the rabbi whether he should do that. So by putting his son's name on it, I don't remember the details, he would save the life of his son, but cause the death of whoever was coming
Yeah.
off that list.
Yes. Oh,
And I think the rabbi refused to answer the question. I think he was not willing to put himself out, but that's the kind of issues that come up in that world. Stephen.
the thing about the water, and if you share it, you both die.
Yes.
How is it though that you know?
Well, that's your understanding. I mean,
Because obviously,
the Talmud poses theoretical questions without necessarily explaining, the logic behind understanding the theoretical question. But the principle that it's establishing is you save your own life before you save someone else's life. But I agree with you. I mean, in an actual case, it raises questions about how you would actually know it.
Yeah.
Think about a case, and there have been cases like this, actually in the floods in Texas. Someone is swept up in the flood and they're barreling down the river, and people jump in after them. And there's a high likelihood that if you jump in after them, you're going to lose your life. So the question is, what does Jewish law say about that? And
I would say what you should do is throw a rope or something, so there's
well,
a
I mean,
chance of
yes.
saving them.
So if there's
But it's
another way of doing it, then
not
Jewish law doesn't. That's
suicidal.
not the question we're addressing. But anyway, so I would say it is a theoretical question, and the Talmud is raising it to get at what is the essence of the law, which is that you save your own life before you surrender it to save someone else's life. That's the law. Alan.
So in the example where you alluded to that a rabbi said he wouldn't make an answer or decision between two people, but something in my mind says the Talmud does guide you. If you have a choice and you're only going to save one person, it's not yourself, there is some Talmudic guidance on how you decide what to do, right?
I think in terms of redeeming captives, you redeem people close to you before people you don't know.
Okay.
But I don't know that there's an actual case of a life, this life or that life.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but
some Nazi guard is playing with you, and there's two of your friends there, and the Nazi guard gives you the offer, and you know the people, so it's different. It's I'm trying to work with the question in a way of
Yeah, I would want to review it. I think it might be worth. I don't know what happened to my list. I used to have a list sitting right here, but
it's okay.
there it is. There it is.
Just to me,
I think that would be an interesting thing to look at. Again, I'm just going to make a note
for
to
the other
myself.
teacher or rabbi to say, I don't know the answer, or I'm not going to try to answer that. That got my attention. That's all. I'm allowed to say I don't know, but a rabbi is not allowed to say I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
I looked up what I was telling you about the
yeah.
train, the lady, and it says here the Brody car on the third rail refers to the fatal Metro North train crash in Valhalla, New York, on February 3rd, 2015, where Ellen Brody's SUV got stuck on the tracks and was hit by a train. So the
Okay.
impact dislodged the train's electrified third rail, which then speared into the first train car, causing catastrophic injuries, fires, and the deaths of Brody and 5 train passengers.
Okay. So it's related to the question of the third rail, but not
Yeah,
the ethical dilemma that we were talking
right,
about.
right.
Okay, Ken, one more on this page, and we'll go back to Joanne.
Okay. Family first. We are our brother's keepers. We must save our captive nephews and sisters. We may not play favorites among our children. We may not go to war against our cousins. We must take care of our poor and needy and not mistreat those who live amongst us. We are responsible for creating an ethical society and eventually leading the world into a new age of wisdom and peace. So family first, but not family only.
Okay, again, this sort of is the idea of you take care of your family before others, but I think the idea is that everyone is in the human family. We're all created from the same God. Okay, Joanne, would you like to read? Are we
Sure.
living up to it?
Okay. Yeah. Kindness to strangers. Challenge to boil the Torah down to one message. I can think of at least 3. All human beings, all of us, are created in the image of the deity. The way to serve God, the purpose of the cult, is to create an environment that is fit for God. And the famous injunction, love for your neighbor what you love for yourself. But further down in the same passage, we encounter a similar, no less hallowed injunction. When a stranger lives among you in your land, you must not oppress him. Like one of your native born must the stranger living among you be. You must love for him what you love for yourself. For you have been strangers in the land of Egypt. The mitzvah of treating the stranger like one of your own is made explicit far more than any other norm in the Torah, at least 36 times. This is what God demands of us. Ed Greaves.
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot, when it comes to immigrant rights and I guess racism and so on, that the most repeated mitzvah in the Torah is basically caring for the powerless in society. Widow, orphan, stranger, and so on. It appears in different ways. And Richard Elliott Friedman talks about the idea that it was the Levites that came from Egypt and went to the Promised Land, and they had a double experience of being a stranger in the land. Namely, they were a minority in Egypt, and then when they actually entered the land of the Israelites, there were other Israelites and other Canaanites and other ites. I think there were 7 ites living there. So they were also immigrants and strangers in the land. Actually, he explains it's sort of interesting why we have these 2 names for God. One is Yud He Vav He, the other one is Elohim. And he says one of the brilliant elements of the Torah is not that they picked one, but they kept them both. But he also points out, I heard him give a lecture on this. He points out that that in the Torah, this idea is repeated, protecting the powerless in society, 36 times. And he points out the total number of times that this idea is mentioned in other legal codes of the time is exactly 0. Namely, there is no other legal code which calls our attention to the idea of how we treat the stranger, the immigrant, the widow, the orphan, the powerless in society. And it is the most repeated commandment in the Torah. Erwin.
Yeah, I think it's in the Torah also that every 7 years, if you have a slave, you have to let him go.
Yeah, it's actually a Hebrew slave. So
Hebrew slave,
yeah.
yeah.
So other slaves, it's another issue, and so there's there's a
Hebrew
lot of.
slave, and also I think every 7 years, if you own money to your the boss,
Right,
you
the debts are
is given you not have to pay back.
right. And you may recall that Hillel figured out a way to get around that, Erwin.
Yeah.
Because in sort of the mercantile society of cities, if all debts are canceled every 7 years, it basically undermines the economy, and you can't have any kind of lending. And so what Hillel did was to issue a Greek word called the prose bull. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. So basically, he said in the fine print of all these loans, when person A borrows money from person B, the legal fiction is person A is borrowing money from a Jewish court and person B is loaning money to the Jewish court. So it's not a direct person to person loans, and those loans survive the 7-year provision. So whenever the rabbis face a problem that they don't like in the Torah, they figure out a way to get around it. Let's see how much more do we have in this section. Okay, let's read one more section.
All
Justice,
right.
justice, you shall pursue.
Just
Joanne.
Fewer Torah phases are more famous. How many, however, are familiar with the poignant verses of Meir Ariel, the exceptionally talented Israeli lyricist, composer, and performer?
I will
Meir,
say, speaking for myself, I've never heard of this guy.
okay. Meyer's haunting words continue to strike contemporary chords, demonstrating the everlasting relevance of the divine command. I reproduce here only the two first stanzas from the blog. One Israeli song a week. Pursuer of justice, Jimmy and Dean, pursuer of peace, meet at the red pit. Peace and justice are hiding in the darkness, lying silently in a puddle of intoxication in the darkness of blood, or a dark intoxication in a puddle of blood. Pursuer of justice, Jimmy plays the harmonica, and Dean, pursuer of peace, taps on a can, and each sings his own song. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Ask for peace and pursue.
I guess pursue it, I think.
Yeah. Ask for peace and pursue it. Justice, justice, you shall pursue.
Okay. I don't get it. But the phrase is tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. It's in Deuteronomy. And it's one of I think it's the only time I think I once did a sermon on this. It's the only time that a simple noun, so there's the phrase tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. It's the only time that, to my knowledge, that a simple noun is repeated in the Torah. I guess now you could probably ask AI and it would give you an answer. Before, there was no way to do a search on this. There are places where names are repeated, where the angel calls out Abraham, Abraham, and so on. But this is the only time that a simple noun is repeated, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. So I don't want to end with such. Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
No, during the recent ongoing 700-day war, one of the things that Yossi Klein Halevi tried to use this term about the justice, how the war being just is defined by the Talmud, and his I'm going to say interpretation of the double of the word is you're told to do things, told that what is just, but how you behave it justly is the other thing you're responsible to.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so the logic, as it's connected to the war, is the war is just, but has it been proper, implemented satisfactorily, justly?
Yes, so that is that is a classic midrash on why the word is repeated. So not only does the war have to be just, but the way you pursue it has to be just. And there are many who would say that although the war against Hamas and Gaza is just, many would say the way it's being um, um, pursued by Israel is not just.
Yeah, some people would say it on October 8th, and other people would say it a year later, and others are saying it now. But that's the second part. When do you realize that it might not pass the test for the second part? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul?
Yes, just in closing, I want to ask a question. Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are coming. Could be the other way around, but does it have anything to do with the phases of the moon? The moon is just about full. I can see outside my window.
Yes. So the Hebrew calendar is a lunar calendar, and so people are always asking the question, when is Rosh Hashanah this year? And if I'm trying to be cute, I will always say it's always the same day. It's the first of Tishrei, and the first of every month begins. See if I have which ones here. Okay, every month begins with a new moon. A new moon is a moon you don't see. So you have a tiny sliver one way, and then you have nothing, and then the following day you have a tiny sliver the other way. So today is, what's today's date? The 3rd of September. It is the 10th of Elul. And so the moon isn't quite full. The moon is
Not
full
quite. Yeah,
typically
almost.
on the 14th of Elul. And most Jewish holidays take place on the 14th day of the Hebrew month. So they take place at a full moon. The high holidays are exceptions to this. Rosh Hashanah is on the 1st of Tishrei, so there is no moon. And then, well, Yom Kippur is always the 10th of Tishrei. So it's not quite the middle of the moon.
Purim also, of course.
Purim and the beginning of Passover and beginning of Sukkot are all full moons, but
Yeah.
Shavuos is, I think,
Shavuos is like the 6th of the month, I think.
Right. So that would be like,
yeah. So
like quarter or something.
So they very much have to do with the
lunar
with the lunar calendar.
Okay, great.
So,
Passover has a connection. The way I learned is because that gave the Israelites the most light to be escaping across the sea.
Well, they didn't go across the sea on the 14th day of Nisan. It would take them, I think it took a little while to get to the sea.
Well, they used the light on the 14th of Nisan. Okay, maybe.
Yeah. So anyway, but it's not a bad midrash. I mean, but yeah. So and then parenthetically, as we're getting ready for Rosh Hashanah, as most of us know, there are 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and the reason there are 2 days of holidays is because of the uncertainty in when the new moon takes place. So for many holidays, the holiday occurs a few days after the new moon. Israel is a small country, so what used to happen is they're actually at the temple in Jerusalem. You would need probably a baked in, but you would need official observers to say, okay, we've observed that this is the new moon. Okay, we've been watching the moon, and this is the new moon. We declare the beginning of this month. Get the word out. Okay. And so when it was just Israel, they would send out runners to spread the word.
Wow.
And as the country became bigger, they started lighting bonfires, and from hilltop to hilltop to hilltop. But as the diaspora developed and people were living in Greece and in Egypt, you couldn't necessarily rely on getting the word out by the 6th of the month or the 14th of the month or the 10th of the month. So the Hebrew calendar developed the custom of having 2 days of certain holidays. So the one that we're most familiar with is Passover. We have 2 Seders, and there are 2 Passover Seders.
Right.
Except since Passover is on the 14th day of the month, in Israel, there was no question that they could get the word out. So in Israel, there was only 1 day of Passover, not 2 days. And the Reform movement said, we've understood the calendar for certainly 1,000 years or more, so we don't have to pretend we don't know what the phase of the moon is. So the Reform movement has said we're only going to observe 1 day of these holidays, not 2 days of the holidays. The interesting counterexample is in Israel, Rosh Hashanah, by the time they saw that the new moon was there in Rosh Hashanah, was there in Tishrei, it's already Rosh Hashanah, and it's too late to get the word out. You certainly can't light bonfires, and you also can't travel through the land because it's the rules of Shabbat apply. So in Israel,
why can't a Gentile carry the message?
I'm sorry?
A Gentile could.
No, you're not allowed to task Gentiles for things that are restricted Shabbat labor. So anyway, in Israel, if you go to Israel, there are 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and there are 2 days of services, first day and second day. But that's the only 2-day holiday that's observed in Israel.
That follows you made it sound, Rabbi, that the Reform movement's interpretation was different from the modern state of Israel. But my understanding is that, um, well, I shouldn't say, I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but my experience in Israel is that the way the Bible words one day is the way Israel observes the holiday, except for Rosh Hashanah. And
Yeah, and my friends in Israel, they only do one Seder.
Because they're in Israel. So
Yeah.
the rabbis concluded
Right.
in Israel, you don't have a second day because there's no uncertainty about
Right.
when the new moon was because you're close enough to, because you have several days after the beginning of the month to get the word out.
And
Right.
to add to that, what I understand is that in Israel, I think there's 7 walled cities for which there's a second day observed like Purim.
Yeah, so the Purim Sheni is actually in the book of Esther, and it
Purim
only
Sheni-
applies to walled cities.
But some other things apply to walled cities, not just Purim. I just don't know what they are.
Well, probably you can
I
carry
think it was
in a
Sushan
walled
Purim.
city because there's inherently an eruv, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
But
yes.
the only 2-day holiday in Israel is Rosh Hashanah,
Yeah, exactly.
and in the Reform movement, in theory, it's one day. In practice, many Reform synagogues do observe something on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and also many Reform Jews and Reform synagogues have some kind of second Seder on the second night of Passover.
Even as far back as I know, Gates of Repentance, which goes to the 1970s, the prayer book actually says first day Rosh Hashanah, second day. Doesn't mean
Yes.
the practice uses it, but the Reform movement
Yeah,
provides.
certainly allowed for it. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think the current one does, but I'm not sure.
Although the current one does. Yeah, I mean,
The current one does what? It has a second day or no?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in a lot of places people are continuing that practice. So I guess the official position is to make it optional.
But it
And
varies. I mean, my experience even around Northern California is two, I'm going to be quantitative and I'm not totally true, but 2/3 or 3/4, when I'm trying to find a second day service, I have to look a lot before I can find one on Rosh Hashanah.
yeah, because I think a lot of people just don't come. And I
Right.
remember when I was sort of a lay leader at Temple Adat Elohim, we would have a fairly small service on the second day of
Yeah, right.
Rosh Hashanah, and it was so small and informal that sometimes I would lead it.
Well, Rabbi Greenbaum, if I remember in my days,
That's a joke.
it was a service that he invited everybody to bring their own shofars, and it became informal, and
Yeah,
is anybody who could blow a shofar that.
Even at Valley Beth Shalom, the second day is not very well attended.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the conservative movement where it is definitely
I
a
mean,
cog.
yeah, you still need your ticket to get in and
Uh,
everything, but it's just smaller. But I will say about the second Seder, I think the first Seder idea is a desire of all Jewish women who make Seders to not have to do two. One is excruciating enough.
yeah, and I think, in my experience, one is for his side of the family, and the second one is for her side of the family. And also, what is quite common in many synagogues is the second Seder is a community Seder.
So your assumption is you're going to be with your own friends and family in somebody's home, and the synagogue is the community for those who don't have friends and family. They have an opportunity to be in the community on the second night. Yeah.
But the main
Yeah.
point is that it is definitely a lunar calendar. And then the thing that makes it interesting, I think we went to the session about the calendar. The thing that makes it interesting is if you have 12 lunar months, you are 11 days short of a solar year. So if you don't do anything, every Jewish holiday, which is tied to a date in the lunar calendar, would occur 11 days earlier every year.
Which is what actually does happen on the Muslim calendar.
Which does happen on the Muslim calendar. So Ramadan is 11 days earlier every year. And people are 11 days every year is 11 days younger. So, so that's also kind of interesting.
Do we
And
know, do we
Correction.
know, do
hold
we
on a sec. Go
know,
ahead, Lois. Yeah.
do we know why that we follow a lunar calendar? Where did that come from?
I think it's pretty clear in the Torah that the new moon is the beginning of the month. And then
Rosh
so
Hodesh, right?
yeah, well, yeah, Rosh Chodesh, I think just means Chodesh is, I think, related to Chadash, which means new, the head of the new month. But I think the word for month and the word for moon is similar in Hebrew. And then what the rabbis did was, because Nisan is always the 14th, I'm sorry, Passover is always the 14th day of Nisan, and the Torah also says it occurs in spring. So then the rabbis had to do something to make sure that Passover was always in the spring. So 7 times in a 19-year cycle, we add an additional month, a leap month,
Right.
Adar Sheni,
That's
and
right.
that keeps things on traffic, on that keeps things, in proper seasons. And there's also a lot of really interesting things because, you may notice if you keep track of when the high holidays are, they only occur on certain days. You can never have, I think you can't have either Rosh Hashanah or you certainly can't have Yom Kippur on Sunday. And the reason you can't have Yom Kippur on Sunday is you have to cook before Yom Kippur in order to break the fast. And if Yom Kippur was on Sunday, in theory, you would cook on Saturday, but you can't cook on Saturday. So you
Right.
would cook on Friday, and on the evening of Yom Kippur, you would not only break the fast, but you might get food poisoning.
So this is the question, which I know the answer, Rabbi, because I've heard you give the answer to this. The Yom Kippur is always on the 10th day of Tishrei.
Yes,
Normal sequence of days of the month and even a leap month, you would think that the 10th of Tishrei could be any day of the week, but it never is.
right. And that's how carefully the calendar is constructed.
Yeah.
So some months have 29 days, some months have 30 days, some months have 28 days, and they constructed it to prevent that. And there's about 5 or 6 other things
Right,
that
right.
go into that. I used to know all of them. I actually have a book about that, but I don't remember what it is. So I will stop recording.